frameworks. Yes, let's go on. We're starting from a ship with an autonomous AI.
Widzieć i przed Państwem wystąpić.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here. I thank Dr. Kłoda for the possibility of participating in this event, and it won't be a surprise. We're talking about regulations, so I'll also talk about legal provisions. The provisions concerning flying with drones, colloquially speaking, that is UAVs. There are quite many of them. This topic is quite regulated on the EU level because we have as many as 3 regulations. The first regulation, the main regulation adopted by the European Parliament with the aspect of using airspace and establishing an EASA. There also the topic of drones is addressed somehow. Perhaps it's not very detailed, but we will find some things regarding drones. Then we have a regulation specifically concerning flying with drone and the regulation saying how the drones should be designed and constructed. So we have 3 EU regulations that complement one another, and each of them addresses a bit different issue. We have also national provision of the air traffic aviation law that allow us the use of a UAV or a manned vehicle in the airspace. So the question is whether these regulations somehow relate to the issue of using autonomous drones. Not in very detailed way. There aren't specific regulations that tell us we can use UAVs in such autonomous UAVs in such or different way, but generally, as a rule, it is allowed. We can use such drones because, for example, we have a definition of UAV pilot, and we see there that the pilot doesn't have to directly control the flight, but may also monitor the flight and have the possibility of intervening when he sees something is wrong, not according to the assumptions, some danger emerges, then such an UAV pilot may enter like master on the sea. So we also have a person that may intervene in a critical situation. So the provisions concerning flying allow for such a possibility, even though they do not speak in detail how AI should work to pilot a drone. But we also have other regulations, as if 3 regulations wouldn't be enough. That is AI Act. AI Act is a fashionable EU regulation concerning using different systems of artificial intelligence. It's been adopted quite recently. We are still on the stage when AI is slowly becoming part in the legal order. The things we'll be talking about today will in majority be enforced next year, so we still have some time to prepare. So what does AI Act tell us? It indicates how we can use various solutions based on AI, which means that if we wanted to adopt a solution based on AI in our drone so that it flies autonomously, then it must be, on the one hand, such drone must take into account all aviation regulations, and on the other hand, it must take into account all AI Act provisions. In some situations, the drone will be something that is called a system of high risk, it's a high-risk system, but it's not about AI that shoots people like a Terminator, but systems that potentially either have a great impact on how people live and function or may threaten safety, aviation safety. So in some situations, our drone will be a high-risk system, but not always. First of all, to see AI as a high-risk system, it must be combined, connected with a product safety element. So in a way, the drone must be connected with AI in such a way that it is responsible for the safety of its use. So to simplify, if AI concerns the functioning of the camera so that we can take nice pictures, this is not a safety element of this product, and this will not be a high-risk system. But if AI is responsible for flight stability, for some limitations, as for areas it may not fly into, then of course this will be a system that is connected somehow with safety. So in such a situation, there might be necessity to follow EU regulations concerning high-risk systems. But there's also one other condition, because AI must be implemented in a drone that is subject to compliance assessment. Compliance assessment, it's certification, but because in aviation law certification means something else, I am going to talk about compliance assessment. So if someone produces or designs a drone, if wanting to market it in the EU, it must have a compliance assessment that is checking whether the drone meets the EU compliance requirements, and then it is supplied with the CE certification mark. The process of compliance assessment vary. They may be more or less complicated. We are here focusing on processes that are more complicated. That is compliance assessment with the use of notifying organ. So when there are situations when we design a drone, produce a drone, not only we have to meet the conditions resulting from regulations, but we also have to go to an external accredited organization that verifies whether we really met the requirements. Somebody comes from the outside, an expert, and checks whether the design is compliant with aviation regulations. And we have such categories of drones that are not subject to such assessment, the simplest modeling AUVs, whereas all the other categories are subject to a certifying authority assessment. So if in such drones we implement an AI system that has some impact on the safety of the product, then it will be a high-risk system, which means
być może stety dla użytkowników i dla osób postronnych, a niestety dla dystrybutora, czyli producenta tego BSP.
Unfortunately for the distributor of such an UAV, that it has to meet additional requirements. In AI Act, we have several such obligations. First of all, this is a system of risk management. This is the first main requirement. We heard a bit about it today in the context of SORA risk assessment. Here we also have a risk assessment. It's slightly different, but it's based on the same assumptions. In general, EU regulators like risk assessments and commissioning such risk assessments to different authorities, so the same goes to AI-based systems. What does it mean that you have to perform a risk assessment? The distributor of such a UAV system must, colloquially speaking, critically think what can go wrong if somebody uses such an UAV, what potential threats are related if AI system is implemented on such a drone. And then on this basis, proper protection measures needs to be implemented, and the entire process, of course, needs to be documented in case of inspection, so it cannot be just roughly conducted. It's completely formalized, which is later tested or checked by a notifying organ during certification. Second thing is managing of training data. So if we train the equipment on some training data, we must ensure that the data are objective, that they are reflecting the reality, that they are as broad as possible with different scenarios. So, for example, if we have a system that is responsible for autonomous flight of a drone and it is trained only in the valleys, then it perhaps will not work properly in the mountainous area. So in such a situation, when we create such a UAV with AI, then we have to consider that it has to be taught flying also in conditions, in mountainous conditions. Another obligation, registering incidents for the purpose of identifying risks and monitoring the life of an AI system. So if the distributor introduces such an AI system on the market, so this is available to clients, then later he must verify how users use such a drone, check if there are some undesirable incidents, and later consider such incidents in the further development of this product. So this is what identifying risks and registration of incidents means while monitoring the life of an AI system. So this means when such a distributor puts the product on the market, that the distributor is no longer responsible for this product, cannot just dump it and leave it. It's not a mobile phone that can be no longer updated after a year. This is not the case. The assessment of the usage and risks must be done continuously. And the question is how to collect data. Using various electronic solutions, including drones, sometimes we are asked if, as users, we agree to sending to manufacturer some statistical data, and I think in such situations, such statistical data could cover some undesired incidents while using a drone within an AI system. But of course, it is our decision whether this possibility, we will give such an option to the distributor, but the manufacturer must allow for such an option and must prepare to gather such information, such data. Other important obligations, preparation of detailed technical documentation, like with the risk assessment, the entire process of creating a drone that has some solutions based on AI is quite formalized, and the entire documentation concerning the system also must be created. This documentation has two dimensions. The first is purely technical, that is, the process of designing and manufacturing of this drone is described in such a way so that somebody from the outside may see how the drone was constructed and how the AI-based systems were implemented within it, how they work, how they take decisions. At least to a certain degree, it has to be described and verified, and what impact it has on its use. This is the first stage, and the second stage of creating the documentation, more connected with transparency. That is, users buying such a drone with an AI system must be informed on how it exactly works, what it does. So we can't give the black box to the clients and say, okay, here is the UAV with artificial intelligence, you'll see how it works. So it has to be specified in the manual. The manual must be clear. So we have to take care of the user experience and make this manual easy, understandable to the users, to the average users. And another thing is ensuring possibility of supervision of the machine by humans. So the person using such a system and allows AI to control the drone must always have the possibility of intervening. It results from the aviation provisions and from AI Act. This control is of key importance. It also occurs in the acts on maritime systems, ground systems, so this is exactly the same. The possibility of controlling the machine by humans, the possibility of intervening is crucial, and it applies to all high-risk systems. So, for example, but not only drones. For example, medical equipment. Before the diagnosis is made by such a system, a person must be able to intervene. And the last point, ensuring a proper level of resilience of the system, including cybersecurity. I think it's quite intuitive when we speak about drones. So when we use such a solution that flies, hovers in the airspace, that we must make sure that no possibility of interference by third party is possible. So jamming with some systems. As we can see, you could see radio-electronic battle. I mean, somebody else trying to intervene with the flight change direction. This is important that such a resilience is ensured, and this is also connected with the typical cybersecurity, that nobody who has some bad intentions may influence where the drone flies, and it also shouldn't be disrupted how we control the drones. The manufacturer must create the systems in such a way as to ensure no interruptions are possible before such a product is launched on the market. It must be tested, make sure that it's safe. If during testing it's found that some elements are not done properly well, on a properly high level of resilience, then this needs to be corrected. That's all on my part. Thank you very much. So these are the most important obligations concerning high-risk systems resulting from AI Act. There are also several other minor obligations, but in fact, about AI Act, we could write a long book. So since we have the time limitations, this is all I wanted to give you for now. Thank you very much.